I think that's a perfectly legitimate question. The essence of the question is, how do you morally navigate the situation as it began on October 7th and as it has unfolded? And the young woman said, can't we do both? Can't we condemn what was done on October 7th and also condemn the Israeli reaction to October 7th? And I am, of course, the first one to acknowledge that that is a morally tenable position. I, however, do not fully agree with it, and obviously people can, decent people can agree to disagree. I will now give you my considered opinion, but not pretending that I have a monopoly on moral truth. I begin from two facts. Fact number one, that the people of Gaza have been trapped in a concentration camp for 20 years. Number two, that the international community had abandoned them, and whatever tactic they attempted, including nonviolent resistance, had no impact on freeing them from that concentration camp. Now, what is exactly the legal relationship of Gaza to Israel at this point? Since you are college students, I will expect from you a higher level of understanding than to a broad public. There are two concepts under international law, one called occupation, the other called annexation. What distinguishes an occupation from an annexation is very simple. An occupation is supposed to be temporary. An annexation is permanent. Now, as you already know from my previous remarks, Gaza came under Israeli occupation in 1967. That's more than a half century ago, which means it's no longer an occupation. It's not temporary. It's a permanent condition, which means Gaza is a part of Israel, as is the West Bank. The Israelis say they came under attack from a foreign entity. They came under attack, sometimes it's said, by a foreign state. That's factually and legally incorrect. Israel, what's called pre-1967 Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza, they're all one state. And that state, as the Israeli Human Rights Organization bestselling put it, that one state is founded on the principle of, and now I'm quoting bestselling, it's founded on the principle of Jewish supremacy. It's a Jewish supremacist state. So when I try to understand Gaza, I try to look for an example, an analogy, an analogous situation. More or less, analogies are never perfect. And the closest analogy I could find in my own mind was the United States before the Civil War. What happened in Gaza on October 7th was a slave revolt. There was a slave revolt in Gaza. And our slave revolts in the United States, they were not pretty pictures. Take the case of the biggest slave revolt, the largest slave revolt, It was by Nat Turner. I suspect most of you in the audience have heard of the Nat Turner Rebellion. Well, Nat Turner was apparently a very smart guy like Frederick Douglass. He was a smart guy, no question about it. He also was a religious fanatic, a religious zealot. He was convinced that he was an instrument of God's will, and that the rebellion which he planned and then executed, the rebellion was sanctioned in all of its fine points by God. Well, Nat Turner's orders to his Confederates was, quote, "Kill all whites." And they proceeded to do just that. They killed 70 white people, about 60 people, men, women, and children. Before proceeding on that analogy, I would want to make the point that in current history curriculums in college campuses, and also in our cultural institutions, in our curricula and in our cultural institutions, Nat Turner's rebellion, the essence of which I just described to you, occupies an honored place. Now, that's just a fact. In current, you might say, in current woke curriculums, and you might want to say current woke cultural institutions, Nat Turner's rebellion, which resulted in the deaths of scores of innocents who were deliberately targeted by the rebels, it occupies an honored place. Now, I was curious when I started to think about the Nat Turner Rebellion. I was curious what was the reaction of the white abolitionists, many of whom are from your part of the country, Massachusetts. The great white abolitionists, those who fought against slavery before the Civil War. Some of you will be familiar with their names because they're from your, as I said, area of the country. Charles Sumner, Thaddeus Stevens, Wendell Phillips, and William Lloyd Garrison. William Lloyd Garrison, probably the best known of the abolitionists, though they were all of extremely high character and intelligence and moral commitment, moral conviction. William Lloyd Garrison, he edited a newspaper called The Liberator. It was the main organ of the abolitionist movement. And right after the Nat Turner Rebellion, he wrote a long article. Now, I would urge you, your college students, so you should take your status, in my opinion, you should take it seriously. So when you go home tonight, it's not an onerous, that means too burdensome a task. Go home and check for yourself what I'm saying now, whether it's accurate. Now remember, Nat Turner was a religious fanatic, no question about that, as was John Brown. Nat Turner told his Confederates to kill all whites. They proceeded to do that. And apparently, Turner's reasoning was he wanted to create a national crisis in the United States that forced our country to confront the problem of slavery. It wasn't just a promiscuous outpouring of violence. There was, so to speak, there was reason in the madness that this was the only way to force people, our country, to reckon with that colossal crime of slavery. So, what did William Lloyd Garrison write? You can find it easily on the web. You just enter William Lloyd Garrison, Nat Turner, Liberator, the newspaper. You'll find it easily. That's how I found it. He began by saying, I told you so, or we told you so. We told you. You treat these people this way, you lacerate them, you humiliate them, you degrade them, you treat them worse than you would treat animals, that it was only a matter of time before this happened. That's how he began. Next, he heaped ridicule on all those liberals who utter these high-sounding phrases about liberty, about equality, praising, as he said, the French in their revolution, praising the Greeks for their commitment to democracy, praising the Poles, the Polish rebellion in the mid-19th century. And he said, but when it comes to black people, you just treat them with utter and total contempt. Now, in the course of his article, William Lloyd Garrison, he does say that what happened in the Nat Turner Rebellion, it was shocking. He doesn't dispute that. It was shocking. And he also says that the killings could not be justified. But there's one thing he doesn't say, and I would like everybody to challenge me on this point. Even some of you who have laptops, and if you're quick readers, go to the exit. It's not a long piece, it's 2 pages. Go outside and read it on your own, and then come back and say, Professor Finkelstein, you're lying. Look at what William Lloyd Garrison says right here. Okay? I'm going to tell you that one of the most exemplary figures in all of American history, one of the most honored figures in all of American history, one of the handful of those great abolitionists who, at risk of personal injury and public obloquy, they fought for the emancipation of our slave population. Never once in that article that he wrote did he condemn the slave rebellion. He did not. And for me, that was a real illumination, because it kind of enabled me to find some clear path in this moral quandary of how to judge what happened on October 7th. It was shocking, yes. Can it be justified? No. Should it be condemned? William Lloyd Garrison clearly said no. Neither condemn it nor condone it. Neither approve it nor disapprove it. Because in my opinion, William Lloyd Garrison saw up front, what that system of slavery was, how it reduced human beings to abject, subhuman creatures. And he couldn't, in all good faith, condemn those who had been driven mad, who had been driven to a fury, whose rage at some point became uncontainable and joined this rebellion. And I won't connect the dots because I think you people are smart enough to connect the dots on your own. Being born into a concentration camp, no prospect whatsoever of ever seeing the light of day outside this concentration camp, no future, no past, no present, just left with pangs of hunger to pace back and forth in this territory the length of a marathon and the width of 5 miles. That was their destiny. That was their date, their fate, and that was their future. And then beyond that, every few years, Israel, as Israel liked to call it, for those of you who doubt me, go and check. You can even check right now if you have your laptop open in front of you. What did Israel call its periodic murderous operations? Mowing the lawn. Just enter, if you're sitting in front of your laptop, enter Israel mowing the lawn. Every few years, Israel would visit upon the inmates of the world's largest concentration camp ever, would visit another massacre on the people of Gaza, mowing the lawn. So, exactly as William Lloyd Garrison, seeing that hideous face of slavery day in and day out, I spent a large part of my life, in fact, almost the whole of my adult life, documenting what's been done to the people of Gaza. I feel with not nearly the moral integrity of the abolitionists. They risked their lives. When Garrison wrote his commentary on the Nat Turner Rebellion, people told him, don't go south because you won't be coming back. But they stuck by their principles. And their principles told them, I cannot in good faith condemn what was done. Was it a criminal? Yes. I'm not going to dispute that. Can it be defended? No. And Garrison was clear on that point. He said the excesses of the slaves cannot be defended. But did he condemn them? Read for yourself. The answer is no. And that's how I respond to the young woman who obviously can reach a different moral judgment from my own.